The ocean is salty, we all know that. But why it's salty, and the incredible role that salt plays in everything from our weather to the very air we breathe? Well, that's one of the biggest secrets on our planet. What if I told you the story of the ocean's salt is really a story of volcanoes, underwater waterfalls, and a hidden process that controls life as we know it? You probably think of it as just water with some seasoning, but the truth is way more bizarre and unbelievably important. Today, we're counting down 7 shocking facts about the ocean's saltiness that will completely change how you see our world. So where did all this salt even come from? The answer is both epic and surprisingly simple. It came from the land. For millions and millions of years, a slow, unstoppable process has been washing our continents into the sea. It all starts with rain. Rainwater is naturally a little acidic because it picks up carbon dioxide from the air. As this acid rain falls on rocks, it erodes them, breaking them down and releasing mineral salts. Those salts are then carried by streams and rivers all the way to the ocean. Think about that. Every river on Earth is a conveyor belt, delivering a constant, invisible stream of dissolved rock, salt, to the sea. And it's not just coming from the surface. Down on the ocean floor, hydrothermal vents, which are basically underwater geysers, are blasting out superheated water that is seeped deep into the Earth's crust, dissolving even more minerals and pumping them directly into the deep sea. Over eons, this salt has piled up. The 2 most common elements, chloride and sodium, make up over 90% of all the dissolved stuff in seawater, which is why it tastes like table salt. So just how much salt are we talking about? Scientists estimate that if you could magically pull all the salt from the oceans and spread it over every bit of land on Earth, it would create a layer more than 500 feet thick. That's as tall as a 40-story office building. Our planet's land is literally dissolving, grain by grain, into the sea. Okay, so the ocean is a giant, ancient soup of dissolved rock, got it. But here's where the story gets wild. That salt isn't just floating around, it's the secret ingredient that runs our planet's entire climate system. Salt, along with temperature, controls how dense seawater is. And that one simple fact creates one of the most powerful forces on Earth, the thermohaline circulation. It sounds complicated, but the idea is pretty straightforward. Cold, salty water is denser and heavier than warm, fresh water. Up in the polar regions, when seawater freezes into ice, it leaves most of its salt behind. This makes the remaining water incredibly cold and salty and therefore super dense. This heavy water sinks, plunging deep into the ocean abyss. That sinking action basically creates a vacuum, pulling warmer surface water from the equator northward to replace it. This kicks off a massive, slow-motion global conveyor belt that churns through all the world's oceans, moving heat around and regulating climates everywhere. Without this salt-powered engine, Europe and North America would be way colder, and the equator would be unbearably hot. The salt in the ocean is the master lever for Earth's thermostat, spreading heat around and making huge parts of our planet livable. It's not just water, it's a critical piece of the machinery that keeps our world in balance. So, that global climate engine we just talked about, it's starting to sputter, and the ocean's changing saltiness is the flashing warning light on the dashboard. Because of climate change, the planet's water cycle is getting more intense, and we can literally see the proof written in the ocean's salt. The basic rule is this: the wet places are getting wetter, and the dry places are getting drier. In drier regions like the subtropics, higher temperatures are causing more evaporation. When water evaporates from the ocean, the salt is left behind, so these areas are becoming noticeably saltier. But in regions near the poles and the equator, there's more rain and melting ice. This huge flood of freshwater dilutes the seawater, making it less salty. Scientists have found that these salinity patterns are changing at a shocking rate, in some places twice as fast as their models predicted. This isn't just some abstract number, it's a clear sign of a global water cycle going into overdrive. The growing salt contrast between different parts of the ocean tells us we can expect more extreme droughts in some areas and more devastating floods in others. The ocean's salt is acting like a giant rain gauge, and right now, it's telling us our weather systems are being pushed to their absolute limits. These shifts in saltiness aren't just a problem for us on land, they are an existential threat to life in the ocean. Every marine organism, from the tiniest plankton to the biggest whale, is adapted to live in a specific salinity range. When you throw that balance off, the entire food web can start to fall apart. A major study in 2023 pointed out that changing salinity is a critical, and often ignored, reason why ocean ecosystems are collapsing. Crucial habitats like coral reefs, mangrove forests, and seagrass beds are incredibly sensitive to these changes. Too much fresh water from floods or too much salt from droughts can mess with photosynthesis, stop reproduction, and cause massive die-offs. The plankton and microbes at the very bottom of the food web are some of the most vulnerable. When they struggle, the effects ripple all the way up to the fish, birds, and mammals that rely on them. What makes this so scary is that these ecosystems are already dealing with warming, acidification, and pollution. Shifting salinity is one more powerful stressor that can push them right over the edge. We talk a lot about temperature, but the simple amount of salt in the water is a life or death variable for countless species, and we're changing it faster than they can adapt. Before we jump into our top 3 facts, if you're finding this as fascinating as we do us a favor and hit that like button. It tells us you want more videos like this and really helps out the channel. We tend to think of the ocean as the gold standard for saltiness. On average, its salinity is about 3.5%, or 35 grams of salt per liter. But on the grand scale of salty places on Earth, the ocean is, well, pretty average. There are spots on this planet that make the ocean look like fresh water. The most famous is the Dead Sea, bordering Jordan and Israel. With a salinity of around 34%, it's nearly 10 times saltier than the ocean. This happens because it's a landlocked lake in a hot, dry climate. Rivers flow in, but none flow out. The only way for water to leave is through intense evaporation, which leaves all the salt and minerals behind. But even the Dead Sea isn't the champion. Tucked away in the frozen, empty landscape of Antarctica is a small, shallow lake called Don Juan Pond. Discovered in 1961, this pond has a salinity that can exceed 40%, making it one of the saltiest bodies of water on the planet. While the massive oceans define our world, these little hypersaline lakes show what happens when you take the science of salt and crank it up to the absolute extreme. Let's go back to the Dead Sea for a minute, because its saltiness creates some seriously strange effects. It's not called the Dead Sea for nothing. The extreme salt makes it impossible for complex plants and animals to survive there. But for people, it creates that world-famous phenomenon: you literally can't sink. The ridiculously high concentration of salt gives the Dead Sea's water a density of about 1.24 kilograms per liter. This makes the water so buoyant that you can float on its surface with zero effort, leaning back like you're in a lounge chair. It's a bizarre experience, floating there, reading a newspaper on a lake that also happens to be the deepest hypersaline lake in the world, over 990 feet deep in places. That buoyancy is a direct result of all that salt crammed into the water. It's a perfect, real-world demonstration of how minerals can totally change the physical properties of water, creating an experience you just can't find anywhere else on Earth. And for our number 1 shocking fact, we're going to the coldest, driest, and most isolated continent on Earth, Antarctica. Here, in a desolate region called the McMurdo Dry Valleys, lies Don Juan Pond. It often looks more like a puddle, just a few inches deep, but it holds an incredible secret. In a place where winter temperatures can plunge to minus 50 degrees Celsius or minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit, Don Juan Pond almost never freezes solid. Its mind-boggling salinity is the ultimate anti-freeze. The huge amount of calcium chloride salt in the water prevents ice crystals from forming, pushing the freezing point down to impossibly low temperatures. While other lakes nearby are covered in thick ice, this little pond stays liquid. For years, scientists wondered where its water came from. They now believe the salts in the soil are so powerful they literally pull moisture out of the thin Antarctic air, a process called deliquescence, which then trickles down into the pond. And as a bonus, the pond wasn't named for the legendary lover, but for the 2 helicopter pilots who discovered it, Don Rowe and John Hickey. Don Juan Pond is more than a weird puddle. It's a huge point of interest for astrobiologists. If life could somehow exist in this extremely salty, cold liquid, it makes the idea of finding life in similar salty patches on other worlds, like Mars, seem a lot more plausible. It's the saltiest, most extreme endpoint of the very processes we've been talking about, a tiny pond that breaks all the rules on the coldest continent on Earth. So the salt in the ocean is so much more than just seasoning. It's the ghost of ancient mountains dissolved over billions of years. It's the hidden engine of our planet's climate, a global conveyor belt of heat that makes our world livable. And as that system starts to change, the salt is sending us urgent warnings that something is wrong. From the strange buoyancy of the Dead Sea to a puddle in Antarctica that refuses to freeze, the story of salt is the story of geology, climate, and life itself. It's a powerful reminder that even the most familiar things about our world hold the most shocking secrets. What do you think is the most surprising fact about the ocean's salt? Let us know down in the comments. And if you want to keep exploring the incredible secrets of our planet, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching.